Good evening, everyone. This is Councilmember Steve Rao, and I want to welcome you to our virtual town hall. We've been doing this COVID-19 crisis, leveraging technology and bringing citizens of Morrisville, the Triangle region, the state of North Carolina together. And today we're putting together a special virtual business town hall with two very special guests who are both friends of mine to talk about small business in North Carolina and to get an update from the Wake Forward program. So we have with us today Wake County Commissioner Matt Calabria. He is one of the leaders who brought this to the commission, him and his colleagues. We want to thank them for this program. And we also have with us John Loyack, who is the Vice President of Global Business Services for Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, and is really out there in the trenches helping small businesses across the state of North Carolina. We also want to thank Radio Murchie. We are hosting this live broadcast on the radio. This is being heard now on 99.9 FM HD4, 101.9 FM, 1490 AM, and also in different states around the United States of America. We're also broadcasting this on Baltimore and Philadelphia, so people can learn about the great things we're doing in North Carolina. And if you're a company in Baltimore or Philadelphia, please think of North Carolina for Secretary Copeland, Governor Cooper, and John Loyack and Chris Chung. We're still open for business. So on that note, I've been asked to just give a quick 2-minute update about Morrisville for the people who have joined, and we thank all those who have joined today. This is also streaming on my Facebook page, so we thank you for joining there. And if you have any questions, you can text me on the Facebook page. So real quickly, the governor today at 5 o'clock announced that we would be going into phase 2. And that means that we will have restaurants being open on a limited basis, salons, gyms and bars will still be closed, and movie theaters, but our stay-at-home order has ended. So there is some light at the end of the tunnel that we're going to be opening up. I want to thank the town of Morrisville, my colleagues and the staff, for working with us on what's called Reconnect Morrisville. And this is a program where we're keeping in line with the governor's executive orders to open up Morrisville slowly. So phase 1, we actually, in our Reconnect program, opened up town hall, public buildings. Staff is going to be coming back next week in 50% capacity. And by the July 4th weekend, we hope to open up all of our facilities, playgrounds. Our parks are already open, and we do hope to have our Morrisville Aquatics and Fitness Center open up. The most exciting thing is we're doing virtual meetings as well, and some of the exciting things we have coming in Morrisville, we've approved a smart shuttle, which is going to be an app that you can use technology and smart technology to start getting more frequent rides. We're working with Go Triangle in that program. I know my colleague Satish Garamella serves as an advisor on the Go Triangle committee for Wake County, so we're very excited about that. We also are excited that the McCrimmon Bypass opened up, and that's a $25 million project which connects 54 all the way to Aviation Evans. It's a beautiful road, so we really look forward to seeing you drive that when you are getting back out. And we've got a number of other projects coming up, but those are sort of the exciting things coming in Morrisville. The government of Morrisville, along with all the Wake County municipalities, is moving forward, and we hopefully one day can do this a year from now. John and Matt, hopefully we'll be in City Hall. I wish I could say, I think most people know it's a backdrop, but it's not a sunny day today, it's a rainy day. So with that being said, Commissioner, we're going to start with you, and we want to make this an engaging, interactive session for our citizens who have joined. But I guess, first of all, before we get into the Wake Forward program, could you just talk a little bit about the CARES Act and the monies that are coming into Wake County? And then I think that's a good segue then to talk about the Wake Forward program, which you initiated. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. And just at the outset, thank you, Steve, for putting this together. I know I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about these issues. They're obviously the issues of the day as we try to get over a lot of the public health hurdles and also work on restarting the economy. With respect to CARES Act funds, obviously, I think folks know the broad brushstrokes nationally. As parts of the CARE Act, there has been some funding that went to the school system, to colleges and universities, and we're benefiting to some extent from those monies. But in addition to all that, Wake County applied for CARES Act funding for relief for any number of purposes. and we have received, or better, maybe a better way to say it, has been allotted about 193, $194 million. Now that sounds like a lot, but the uses of that money are pretty confined. So we will not be using that to make up revenue shortfalls as a result of decreased sales taxes. We can use it, however, for things like purchasing PPE, making sure our emergency operations center runs and continues to run smoothly. A lot of coronavirus related expenses, but in addition to that, we're able to use that money for small business relief. And so that's where we lead into the Wake Forward program. And that's why we were able to use $5 million in that $194 million pot for the work that we're doing and that we're going to be talking about today.
Okay, great. Now, we're going to talk to John Loyack in a couple minutes, but we've had, the PPP, which is the Personal Paycheck Protection Program, Emergency Disaster Loan. We've heard from Tom Stith on that. And then you've got different cities that have been doing different things. The city of Raleigh, that I think is run by the Carolina Development Fund and Wake Tech. Then you've got Apex working with the North Carolina Rural Development Center. So what was it that motivated you to start this Wake Forward program, Matt, Commissioner? And then what is involved in the Wake Forward program?
Well, we know that right now our local businesses are hurting. Obviously, everyone, no matter who you are, has been affected by this pandemic. But small and independently owned businesses have felt the brunt of this. And the reality is, the pandemic doesn't just affect our economic well-being; it also affects our culture. Our downtowns, for example, took decades to build and are at risk of being shuttered in just a matter of months. So we felt that we needed to step up. Our downtowns, not just our downtowns, but our small businesses, because they're a part of our culture, affect not just business owners, but we're talking about workers and making sure that workers have some place to come back to. And we're also talking about residents and consumers because of that contribution to culture, because we want to make sure that we can get the products and services that we need and want. And we want to make sure that our economy is sustained and maintained for the long haul. Those were really the driving factors. So this is a situation where I think if we do it right and if we provide help in strategic ways, a rising tide really can help, at least help float all boats.
Okay, great. And so this program would be basically, it's a $5 million program. $4 million goes to sole proprietors, right? And then another $1 million to contractors, right? Or how's it broken down?
Yeah, so the program, which again we're calling Wake Forward, will provide loans of up to $50,000 to small businesses that are located in Wake County. The businesses have to be 100 employees or fewer. And what we did was we allocated $5 million to that for this purpose. At least as of right now, we may choose to supplement it later. So hopefully, if it's well utilized and if the business community embraces it, we can always supplement it later. $4 million of that fund will fund small business loans, and in addition to that, we've earmarked $1 million that can only go to what we're calling, for the lack of a better description, independent contractors and sole proprietors. So the easiest example is barbers. You may walk into a barber shop and the barber or hairstylist you go to isn't necessarily an employee of the barbershop and is in a lot of ways really just a sole proprietor or an independent business unto themselves, but they're hurting too. And so we wanted to make sure that the smallest of small businesses had opportunities for relief as well. So that's more or less how the funding is broken down.
Last question before we go to John. So and this is important for folks to understand, this is a loan. And there had been requests to make it a grant, but we cannot make it a grant because of the federal laws, correct?
So you're right to highlight this issue. The terms, we started out trying to create this program as a grant program. We were all very enthusiastic about that, and we got a way down the road. But when we started looking at the legal aspects and talking to state experts, we also reviewed an opinion from the School of Government and talked to a lot of folks who have experience with these areas. What we found is that there is an interpretation, a widespread, this is kind of a consensus interpretation of the North Carolina Constitution's Emoluments Clause, which is intended to prevent government from giving sweetheart deals to businesses or favored entities or people or whatever it may be. But the way it has been interpreted by our courts, the way it has been understood, is that it results in a dynamic where you can't give something for free, including in a situation like this, or at least that is the prevailing interpretation. So I can tell you that all the county commissioners pushed as hard as we could to make the, first to make it a grant program, but then secondarily to have as favorable terms as humanly possible for this loan program. And we have had these, so the resulting terms, which provide a 6-month no interest period, at the end of which businesses can pay whatever, pay back the loan if they so choose. And then after that, there's an interest rate that applies that's competitive with what we're seeing for small business loans statewide. And that's commensurate with what the state, as I understand it, is doing, or is very similar to what the state is doing with their loan program, with what the Rural Center is doing with its other loan programs. So the bottom line is, because you're absolutely right, there's been a lot of conversation about this. The bottom line is we are doing the absolute best we can to provide the most favorable, humanly possible terms while still staying solidly within the bounds of the law.
Okay, great. And we're going to talk in a minute about nonprofits. We can come back and talk about that because I know there's been some talk. And I wanted to thank Chairman Ford for his great leadership during this crisis, along with all of your colleagues, Commissioner Hutchison, Commissioner West, Vice Chair Adamson, Commissioner Holmes, Commissioner Evans. And Commissioner Holmes, what I couldn't believe was she actually got a petition of all these barbershops. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I've been going online. So I want to thank her, and she's been working with you. So it's been a team effort, but we want to thank all the Wake County commissioners. I got one question. I'm going to ask it before we hand it over to John. We're going to try to get more interactive. This was from Mark Easley, who's one of my constituents. He's got some great ideas, and I want to talk with Mark while he's here about crowdfunding with Secretary of State's office, John, that there might be some opportunities for Morrisville business to do that. But Mark Easley's question to Commissioner Calabria was, could part of these loans be forgivable like the PPP, or is that not allowed?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, and it's something that we're working on right now. Some of the difficulties that we're running into is, okay, well, it's a loan program, but it originates with federal funds, but then we're administering it through a third-party agency. And so we're working on sort of the chain of how the funds are repaid and everything. I can tell you, and I believe my colleagues on the county commission are going to push for these to be forgivable or forgiven to the extent possible. So as of right now, in the plain terms of the contract, there's not a forgiveness piece of it if you were to sign up for one today. But life is long, and things on the federal and state levels are evolving very quickly. We would love to have these loans converted to forgivable loans. We will certainly push very hard, and hopefully that's something that we'll be able to address in the relatively near term. But that's a great question. We've been asking it and getting our folks working on it, and I don't know how it will turn out, but I'm hopeful that maybe we can set something up next.
Before I go to John, where do people, there's a lot of Morrisville businesses, and there's some of them asking some questions, a lot of business from around the region attending this tonight. Where do they go? It's opened up at noon. What's the website where they go, they can apply?
Yeah, it's just wakegov, wakegov.com/wakeforward, all one word.
Okay, fantastic. So we're going to come back to you, Matt. We're going to be doing some interaction. We've got time. So John Loyack, thank you for being with us. You are in Economic Development Partnership for North Carolina, Vice President of Global Business Services. For those of us who are joining new today who haven't heard from you, could you just give a brief description of EDPNC, your organization, its role in North Carolina commerce, and your role?
I'd be happy to, Steve. And thanks for having me here today, everyone. My organization is the state's economic development agency. So we work very closely with the North Carolina Department of Commerce, but we are the group that is responsible for essentially 5 main focuses when it comes to creating economic growth in the state of North Carolina. I think what most folks know us for is our ability to recruit new businesses into the state. And up until recently, we were on a fantastic run. North Carolina's got a fantastic environment. We are seeing people move into Wake County every single day. We've got the workforce that folks need. We've got the community college system and the infrastructure and the tax space. We've got the pieces of what any economic development organization would be very excited to have. A lot of that's changed, though. What I would say is, while the discussions have slowed down, we continue to remain engaged with a lot of businesses who are looking at this as an opportunity to bring back some of what they may have taken offshore in past years and bring it back here to the U.S. And so, as those conversations continue, I just want the folks on this line to know that we are going to be very happy to bring all of that back. And I think North Carolina is going to compete very effectively against all the other states as we try to bring some of that manufacturing services, whatever it be, back here to the state. We're also the group that's focused on tourism promotion. That is something that has had a significant impact, obviously. The hospitality industry has been crushed by COVID-19. It's going to take us some time to recover. North Carolina is the 6th most visited state in the U.S. in terms of economic impact. The impact of the tourism industry on the state of North Carolina is over $25 billion. I mean, this is a really big industry for us. And so that group remains very, very focused on relief efforts and recovery efforts and getting the tourism, hospitality, and restaurant industry back up and on its feet as quickly as we can. To that end, Steve, I'd love to mention a new program that's going to be rolled out that my organization, working with North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services and the North Carolina Lodging and Restaurant Association and NC State University, are introducing essentially a new certification program. And this is something that's called Count on Me NC, and it'll be rolling out soon. And so this will be an opportunity for any restaurateurs on the line to essentially go through a certification process that allows them to show their clients that they understand how to deal with the new environment that we live in. The next time we are able to get back into a restaurant and sit down and order food, hopefully this weekend, what you will find is it's going to be a very different place. There's going to be a lot less people in the restaurant than we're typically used to, maybe. I don't know that we'll be seeing salt and pepper shakers on the tables, but things are changing. And so we're working with the North Carolina State's Food Protection Group and Food Safety Group, that is, to introduce a new certification program so that businesses can send some of their employees to online classes and get essentially a certification that allows them to show their clientele that this is a place that you can have confidence in. And so more on that coming soon. And then the final 3 groups, I could combine them by calling them the 3 groups that are focused on existing industry here in the state. And these are the 3 teams that I manage. So we have a team of existing industry folks around the state who serve businesses in all 100 counties. Obviously, here in Wake County, we are very, very busy. We also have a small business counseling team. The small business counseling team is the folks who are on the business end of a 1-800 number who are taking calls from folks who are trying to figure out literally everything that you might imagine. In the best of days, this is a team that's responsible for taking calls from folks who are trying to start a business. And believe it or not, even though we're in this amazingly traumatic experience that we're going through, there are still a lot of folks who are looking to open up businesses in this state, and we're happy to help them. And so for anyone on the call who's been impacted by COVID and maybe you've been through loss of a job for a variety of different reasons, if you're looking to start a business, we've got the tools in place right now and folks who are available to help you get that business started as quickly as possible. Final group I'll mention, Steve, is one that probably saw the signs of this first, and that's our international trade team. And so the international trade team is the team that's in place to help North Carolina businesses, particularly manufacturers, sell their products overseas. And so this is a team of people who, in our best years, we typically take North Carolina businesses to 35 to 40 international trade shows every year. And so this is the group of people who were over in international locations as this was beginning to hit places like China and the Middle East. And so we saw the different supply chain disruptions that were taking place in international locations before they began to hit here. And so this is a team that even as early as last December saw what was coming, and we're trying to get on top of things to help North Carolina manufacturers to recognize other maybe local options for their supply chain and help them with a variety of other issues. That is a team that right now are very, very focused on getting businesses, now that we can't, they're not necessarily ready to travel internationally yet, but a business, this is a great time for a business to sit down, and there's actually grant opportunities available through this team, but to have a business sit down and look at their website, look at what is in essence their number one selling tool and adapt that for international markets. And so at present, through the SBA, we have a $6,000 grant program for a small business here in Wake County that wants to adapt their website to sell product into China, into Brazil, into the UAE, into Europe. We've got some fantastic opportunities. And so as we can't travel right now, now is a great time to look at that website and adapt it for international audiences, because to be perfectly frank, one of the ways that we are going to get out of this current economic climate is by selling internationally. Now is not the time to walk away from international markets. And so we want to make sure, and it's our responsibility, to keep businesses as engaged as possible. Final point I'll make, Steve, is that going to something Commissioner Calabria said, I will say to the folks on the phone, at a time like this, it's very sad to say that we actually have a good bit of experience in dealing with situations like this. Not an international pandemic, that is, but an emergency situation. Each year, my department has to deal with a hurricane, a tornado disaster, wildfires out in the western part of the state, and the SBA and FEMA and others come in with support right away. The one thing that I can tell folks on this call is that we will begin to hear about different scams, different fraudulent opportunities, or even just some predatory lenders who are coming in to talk with small businesses. And this is one of those things that I think hurts me the most. One of the things that keeps me awake in a situation like this is that not enough people know about programs like Wake Forward. They don't know about the program that the Golden Leaf Foundation rolled out through the support of the North Carolina General Assembly. And these are fantastic bridge loans, disaster recovery loans, some of them available at very, very low percentages. When the first $15 million that was made available through the Golden Leaf Foundation were actually available for the first 6 months, 0% interest, 0 payments. It's a bridge loan meant to be in place until the SBA funding comes through. Now that we see that have come through, it's great to see Wake County and some of the other local municipalities begin to introduce their programs. In addition to all of those, there's also the one group that always gets overlooked in a situation like this is a lot of the nonprofit lenders. You all have already mentioned some of them. The Rural Center and Thread Capital, Carolina Small Business Development Fund, Self-Help, others. There are a lot of different options, and access to capital is one of the most important issues impacting small businesses. My goal in all this is to make sure that no one gets involved with the wrong lender through this. And so to answer Mark Easley's question, EDPNC doesn't necessarily have our own loan program, but we do make sure that people are aware of all the other ones that are going on. So at this point, there are federal programs, there are state programs, and now local programs as well. And we can steer you to all of those. Steve, if I could put in a quick plug for our Business Link team, their number is 1-800-228-8443. And these are folks who can introduce any small business owner in the state to the type of lending options, the legitimate lending options that they need.
Well, that's great. I think what we're going to do is, do we have any other questions? I want to give the audience a chance to come in and ask any questions. And then I have a couple more questions to ask both of you, just to get us thinking, using this opportunity together to also talk about a little bit about something I don't think we think a lot about, a post-COVID economy. What may that look like? how is that going to affect the economic development policies of Wake County, the state of North Carolina? So I have some interesting things I've been reading about that I'm going to ask you both. But do we have any other questions? And if not, you can always send them on the chat. And I want to thank everyone for attending. We are going to be sharing this video on my Facebook sites, sending it out to the different organizations. So if you want to go back and listen, there's been some very valuable information provided. So I want to thank both of you for that. Do we have any other questions? Mark Easley, thank you for both your questions. Well, I know the questions usually come in at the end. So here's what I want you all to think about. I mean, first of all, I know what your answer is going to be, but the numbers, when we look at them and read them in the news, is just simply unbelievable. 38 million Americans out of work, 1.1 or 2 million in North Carolina, the largest probably in the state history. Unemployment insurance. So people are doing multiple things now. They're going to Department of Security, getting their unemployment insurance. There might be a company going for the PPP or the emergency disaster relief, but they can do all of that, right? I mean, Matt, if I'm in Raleigh and I applied for the Raleigh program, could I then come and do Wake County's? Am I able to do different things?
Yeah, it depends on the combination of things you're trying to put together. I can tell you, for example, one of the things that Wake County assumed was that there's going to be more demand for these loans than supply. Now, that has yet to bear out because we just launched our program at noon today, but hopefully we will see a lot of businesses taking advantage of these opportunities. So we wanted to make sure as many businesses in Wake County got help. Yeah, it depends on the bringing our program and bringing our program through the Rural Center, which is also administering a lot of state provided funds. What they're doing is we wanted it to be as seamless as possible. So you, a business, apply, you say, hey, I need a loan up to $50,000 or 2 months of lost revenue. And we say, okay, we'll look at it, and the state money will go in first. If the state money is not available or runs out, or for whatever reason you can't access that, that's when Wake County's money kicks in. And so in some ways, we are partnering sort of we're kind of backing into it, but we're partnering with a lot of other programs to make sure that as many businesses can get some help as possible. But it may also be that there are programs out there that you can take advantage of in addition to this. So there's nothing precluding someone from taking advantage of a PPP loan and the Wake County program. And that was really important and was a topic of some discussion because, at first a lot of people came forward and said, well, I'm not sure I really like the idea of business owners double dipping is what they'll usually say and that kind of thing. Problem came in when, let's take restaurants, for example. A lot of our restaurateurs have told us that the PPP doesn't work as well as you might think for them because they lost a lot of inventory. And so while they're supposed to put a lot of that money toward payroll, they've got inventory issues. Also, the PPP requires you to get back, work really hard to get back up to full employment. And that's part of the deal. But restaurateurs lost so many employees who may have moved on that they're in this tough position where, okay, they've got a deadline where they have to hire all their employees back. And they can start doing that, but if they come up just short, then they don't get the PPP loan, but now they hired all their employees back. So there's almost a sort of game of chicken going on that they were running into as well. So the idea is make different sources of funds available, but in addition to that, acknowledge that there's no one size fits all solution or grant or loan program. And so by having this patchwork, we're really creating a toolkit that allows us to pick the right tool for the right set of circumstances.
Okay, great. And I know our Morrisville Chamber, I want to thank them. They've just sent an email out promoting your program. There's been a lot of different groups, and nonprofits is something also that we might be thinking about later, correct? Because it's an important part of our economy.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've certainly advocated for. Just like anybody else, our nonprofits are hurting. And of course, a lot of our nonprofits have really come to the fore in recent weeks because they do things like provide food security measures or help us house some of our most vulnerable citizens. And so, provide for the arts, all the things that make the tapestry of our community what it is and as rich as it is. and make sure we help the most vulnerable among our residents. So they certainly contribute a lot, and they're hurting just as much. So in the coming weeks, it's a little bit more complicated, and for various reasons, it wasn't. While I tried to get it into the Wake Forward program, we weren't able to put that together as of this point. But that's one of the things I'm going to be interested in doing in the coming weeks.
Okay, well, we really appreciate that. John, I'll go back to, we did have one more question from, I think, the same person. They were asking about the Wake Forward program and whether they could be applied to any other matching grant programs. Could you retype that question? Whoever answered that, asked that, or maybe you guys can see it. There was a question about whether the Wake Forward program could be applied to other matching grant programs.
Just a brief comment. As far as I know, I mean, none of the terms of the R program have been designed to provide a match. There's not, whether you got a loan or didn't get a loan, you can get a loan through the Wake Forward program, regardless of whether you got a loan elsewhere. A lot of times when you create matching programs, you're trying to incentivize some sort of good behavior, right? But in this case, the terms of the Golden Leaf funds and other funds are pretty well defined and cut and dried and locked in. And the decision makers there are probably not going to change their behaviors based on whether or not Wake County promises to match their money. So maybe there are some benefits to it, but that's my initial thought and just my report on the status of where we are right now.
Okay, great. So we're going to be waiting. Please chime in. We have a little bit more time. So if you have any questions, I guess the thing that I want you all to think about, and we can sort of have a conversation, is that, the post-COVID economy, one concern is that, for example, teleworking. So if more people telework, John, like Twitter announced, they're not going to be allowing people to, you don't have to leave your home. You can work, and Bank of America employs 180,000. So assuming that companies start doing that, how would that affect economic development? Because if I'm a CEO of a company, and I'm just playing devil's advocate, I'm starting to think about this. If Microsoft, we were together with Commissioner Calabria and my council when we celebrated the 500 jobs at Microsoft. But what if a company says, I don't need to have a big workforce? Everybody can work around the country. I mean, not to be negative, Nelly, how does that give us an opportunity to pivot in terms of helping the entrepreneurs? Like with John Chambers, from my home state of West Virginia, former CEO of Cisco, says that we're going to lose 40% of jobs because of automation. And he's been saying that we can create about 15 million new globally in entrepreneurs and startups. Is this a time we should be thinking more about startups, smaller companies? Just a food for thought.
Yeah, no question about it, Stephen. I think the answer to that is yes, we should. First, to answer your question just about the remote workforces and what kind of impact that might see, I will say that is something that's been around for quite some time. I worked in the publishing industry back in the mid 1990s, and I remember a book we worked on about home offices and what could be done around that. I mean, that was something that was available even before the internet, everybody. But what I will say is, out of this experience, I think a lot of businesses do recognize that their employees can be very productive working from a remote location. So it has given a lot of businesses pause. My company is one of those. I mean, we're looking at, we work in the Wells Fargo Tower in downtown Raleigh, and we are working on our plan to get back into that office, but it is something that it just, in theory, as you look at the productivity that our team has seen over the last 8 to 10 weeks, to go back to that environment. I mean, maybe we go back to a smaller office. We're starting to see architectural design firms and furniture companies who are redesigning the way that things are going to work. Things are going to be very different as a result of this. Having said that, I think North Carolina still provides everyone with the types of things that they need. And so I think a business like Microsoft, who did come here and opened not one, but 2 major offices here in the state, are going to continue to look at places where they can find this kind of environment, because it's not just about where the office is. It's about where these people work and what schools they send their children to and the roads that they drive on and the airports that they fly out of. It's about all of those things. In North Carolina, for us, and goes back to Commissioner Calabria's comment just about the efforts that have been made into downtown development here in Wake County and all over the state. I think about the small businesses that line those roads. And there are over 900,000 small businesses in the state of North Carolina. And I know not all of them are going to be open after we get through all of this. Those are businesses that we really have to focus on. And then the entrepreneurial community in general is one that I think North Carolina has benefited from. I mean, companies like Red Hat and SAS were just an idea at one point, and we look at where they are now. And so I really do think that people like myself in economic development need to give more pause to maybe the stage 2 companies who are at 10 employees and maybe 2 million in revenues, who are ready to really launch. A company like Archive Social out of Durham. You know, we've got to do more to invest in that overall environment and make sure that those folks have the types of things that they need to really get their business up and running. One of the most important things we can do for them is make sure that they have the talent that they need. As a result of all this, we know there's going to be a lot of available people on the rolls who are looking for work. And so I think for the foreseeable future, you know, the employers are the ones who are going to benefit from an available workforce. But moving on, the investments that we've made in, just using as an example, into our community college system. Wake Tech, Steve, I don't know if you remember, but Wake Tech was actually awarded as the #1 online community college in the United States of America recently. That is something for us to be really proud of and continue to invest in, because that's providing, even through all of this, our students are still being educated, our workforce is still being trained. And so someone who's working at Microsoft, managing a team who needs people to go through a certification process, even through all this, even through COVID, those people can go through those classes and get the certifications that they're going to need to make North Carolina the kind of place that you never leave if you're a business.
Yes, and we have a question from Wendy Claire Coulter, but as a follow-up to that, I think absolutely, and we want to thank the county for supporting Wake Tech. If President Rawls is listening, I think he was going to join today. We're just so delighted with the Wake Tech RTP campus, the great work being done by Tom Looney and the team there on AI and cybersecurity and all what we call the new jobs, the new economy. So Wake Tech is open for business, and we are very proud of the work they're doing. A question from Wendy Claire Coulter. How will businesses be able to repay the loans? What impact does that have on these businesses?
Yeah, so it's a good question. A couple of things, and I saw a question earlier from somebody asking about whether it was a grant or a loan, who may have missed the earliest parts of this discussion. Again, it's a loan program. One of the things that we are going to be working on is trying again to figure out what kind of forgiveness we can work into this, because that's the core question. But again, and John, I think you talked a little bit about bridge loans. What we would like to do, one of the pieces of this, knowing that the first 6 months are going to be interest-free, no payments, is that for the thorniest period, you're not going to have to pay any interest or make any payments. And what that means is you can get through the woods, and then if you can bounce back in that time, you can pay it back right away. You know, if you pay back the loan a year after you take it, then, you know, on average, it might be something like, you just doing the math, I mean, 2.75% interest rate, right? So, because, you know, you have the first 6 months for free, and then you have the next 6 months at 5.5% interest rate. So the thought is that a lot of these businesses are going to be doing early repayments, and that's encouraged, totally accepted. There's no penalty for that, and we made sure of that. In terms of what happens to businesses that default, obviously, you know, again, because we really wanted a grants program, we're going to be pushing for as liberal and as favorable a process for that as possible. ultimately that's going to be, we're going to have to defer, I think, to a lot of the processes that are in place through the Rural Center, Thread Capital, John, you mentioned earlier, that's administering this. So the folks that do this best in the state have standard processes for this. And so we are fueling those efforts, but that's something that we're going to be working out with those groups. And if I can just circle back on one thing, John, you were good to highlight when we were talking about startups and what comes next for our economy. I tend to be a stick in the mud on a lot of this stuff, and I tend to think that the business community equilibrates to whatever makes sense for them. And so I started out thinking, okay, well, they reached they were engaging in practices that made sense for them before this, and so afterward they'll probably swing back to the way things were. But I think increasingly we are going to see the results of the fact that all our businesses were sort of forced to be early adopters of a lot of these new technologies, like Zoom. I mean, I hadn't heard of Zoom before the crisis. But John, the thing that you highlighted that I think is just so important is worker training. We tried to expand on that with the Wake Works program, which passed just a few months ago, but was passed before coronavirus was a household name. And so we've got the Wake Works program, but also I would just highlight that this is our opportunity to identify the things that we probably should have been doing in a more robust way earlier. And that might include things like the Earned Income Tax Credit. That might include things like the child care subsidy, two federal and state level programs that are designed to remove barriers to getting people back to work. So coronavirus is not the only thing that's going to prevent people from getting back to work. But since that is at a premium right now, we really want to focus on programs that do remove those barriers writ large.
Oh, that's fantastic. And Wake Works is an apprentice program, right? So that was a program that you all led on, and it basically is providing books and all of the tools necessary for someone to go get an apprenticeship in the vocational trade. Right?
That's right. And it's important to remember that just 8-10 weeks ago, we were in an economy where the labor market was really tight. And so we were looking for folks to do these hands-on jobs like, HVAC repair and IT stuff and, all these critical need jobs that we just did not have enough workers for. And so what we said was, we're going to through Wake Tech, we're going to set up apprenticeships with area companies that need workers, and to incentivize you to come back, get the requisite worker training, and get in those jobs. We're going to pay for your education. That means tuition, books, fees, uniforms, tools, you name it, we've got it covered. And so we've gotten a lot of the interest in that program. It is really, perhaps we should have done it a long time ago, but it is really a happy coincidence that we launched that just weeks before COVID-19 broke out in North Carolina. But we're really excited about that program, and it's going to be more helpful probably than we ever imagined.
Okay, great. I've had two more questions come in via tweet. Do we have any other questions? I'm going to start with John on this one, but Matt, thank you so much. And you've got some really great stuff going on in Wake County. I go to the meetings sometimes and I miss going, but I've been watching your meetings online, and it's really, it makes me proud. You guys are doing great work.
Thank you.
These two questions have come in on my phone. They were texted to me, but I guess I'll start with John, and it's interesting. So we've talked a lot about entrepreneurship and innovation. And lately I've been getting a lot of emails from technology companies that are developing apps. Just as early as today, I got an email from a Morrisville-based entrepreneur that's developed an app for contract tracing. So to what extent, we have a strong tech, the question came in from a CEO of a tech company he said, ask John and Commissioner Calabria, we're the third fastest growing tech economy in the United States, at least RTP is. And what could we be doing to encourage more of these technology entrepreneurs that might be at SaaS, they might have left SaaS, IBM, Red Hat, Cisco, to step forward with how we can help use information and smart cities to better address the pandemic from information issues. So if I could see, where people are contacting others with COVID, so I can more quickly contain the spread. And the person who asked this question was highlighting a show on 60 Minutes a few weeks ago about Governor Newsom in California using Blue Dot, and also a piece done by Fareed Zakaria a few weeks ago about Estonia and how Estonia is using artificial intelligence. So do you think this is something that we can work on as a state and a county in a very technology-rich area like the Triangle?
No, there's no question about it, Steve. And I think it's something that is, I think the lesson learned from this particular experience, and one that, to be frank, I knew was a challenge for us even before we started dealing with the pandemic, is that North Carolina needs to take more advantage of the things that exist here. We need to be more aware of the things that exist here. So to answer the question, what I would say is, for the first part, in terms of what we could do to make this more appealing, it's developing that workforce. You know, if that workforce is here and is available, this is the place that folks will want to launch that business. We used to say, when we looked at the likes of Massachusetts and California, big challenge there was that a lot of the investors, the investment community was in those locations. And so it was kind of hard for us to compete with that. You know, that is still the case, but as long as we're able to show folks, we can help you meet the basics here, we can help you get this business off the ground, and we've got the talent you need, I think that'll happen. What we need to do better is to link people from that community to, whether it's our state, whether it's you know, the university system here, whether this, I mean, maybe we need our own Berry Amendment here in North Carolina, where we are purchasing product, whether that's software and services or there's something that's manufactured here in the state. And so what I've noticed is we've tried to get industries like the PPE industry off the ground. It is remarkable to see how much of the supply chain for something, particularly coming from the textile industry, still exists. And so that's one I think is going to be kind of a highlight of this. And when we look back on this, is the birth of this American-made PPE industry and what's available here in North Carolina. Doesn't necessarily help us from the tech side. So if I focused on that, I would say that it is, we need people here to be more aware of that. You know, when I hear about businesses, when I hear about folks here who, I myself worked at a startup back from 2002 to 2011. And it was remarkable to me. It was a company that had a viral impact on healthcare IT, and yet we were barely known here in the state. That paradigm needs to change. That's something that I think, you know, whether we're talking about local municipality like Morrisville or even on the state level, folks you need to stand behind the products that are made here in the state. And so I would say that's one of the things I'd like to see more of.
There's another, okay, great. Before I go to Commissioner Calabria, we got another question. It says that, can we push funding towards these new technologies and stronger analytics companies? You know, so in other words, if someone had a great idea, and I've already gotten a few, I'm telling them, I'm going to put you in touch with Bill Greaves, the Chief Innovation Officer of the county, or maybe the Human Services Division, or a the State Secretary, Tracy Dokes, or city CIOs of cities. So is there an opportunity to pilot these technologies, and if they work, maybe provide funding for these analytics, these data companies, these startups?
I'll just speak for Wake County to the extent that one commissioner can speak for Wake County, but you know, I think we are always open to looking at these kinds of new innovations. We have an innovation hub built right into at one of our main buildings at Wake County, where we just test new technologies. I mean, we have a whole room. I walked in there a year or two ago, and it's just, we've got different kinds of drones, because we're using drones for anything from inspections to crime scene investigation. Because, you know, taking pictures of crime scenes before involved getting on a fire truck's ladder and taking a picture down. So, you know, we're trying, and, you know, a lot of those can be local companies for things like that. So I think the county's open, and especially open to fostering good ideas from local companies. I can tell you, I do hear quite a bit about access to capital, and we have been working on that, especially, you know, when you've got entrepreneurs from underprivileged communities. That's especially a big issue. But in the business sector, some of the most heartbreaking stories that we hear are those where a great idea started in NC State, and then they went to Silicon Valley to develop it. Well, we've got to figure out how to keep our homegrown success stories homegrown. And I think a lot of that is just the ecosystem that you talked about. So, the county, as a local government, does have some limitations in terms of what we're able to do. We don't have the kind of budgets and ability to borrow money that the state or especially the federal government might. And so we are in a position where we're not always so great at significant amounts of funding, but we do, we have launched Raleigh, launched Wake. In every town now, we've got programs where we're incentivizing startups. We're providing prizes for startups. We have startup competitions. This is something that really just launched in the last 12 to 18 months. And it's really, I think, pushing the envelope, not just for innovative technologies, but especially for innovative technologies, but for smart businesses writ large.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, and I also want to give a plug for the launch program, which is with Wake Tech. We had our own program, Hot Innovation in Morrisville. And, I think NC Riot, Tom Snyder at NC Riot was the Internet of Things organization. They have a Mission R Moonshot mission, which is like basically companies that can come in and go through the accelerator. And if it's something that's an app that you're developing for the pandemic, they're going to waive the accelerator fee. So it's fascinating when you go to these events and you see the great innovation that's taking place. One more question. They just want to thank us for the great info. And the final question that came in was about crowdfunding. So we're going to be bringing in Secretary Marshall on May 30th for a town hall meeting. And there's been an idea of crowdfunding that, could businesses use crowdfunding to help raise money? I guess the answer is yes, as long as they go through the regulatory requirement of the Secretary of State's office. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's right. I'd have to defer to John and others about state level policy, but obviously that's something that we would encourage in general, because especially in the scarcity of capital, we're going to need innovative ways of funding, just like we need innovative tech ideas.
Okay, great. We just got a question from Barb Blair, and she's a great business owner in Morrisville. Her husband and her own the Exercise Coach, which is an amazing high-tech gym in Morrisville. I'd encourage you all to go visit it. The challenge is we can't. I thought that it was going to be open, and Barb's question is that the governor's recent order, and John, we'll start with you because you're a state economic development official, but also Matt, you county, the governor's order does not allow gyms to open. So this was a bit of a surprise. I think some of us, even myself, thought gyms were going to open. I guess we're being cautious, but what do we tell business owners like Barb? I mean, they have gone above and beyond the call to open to Morrisville, and now they're just playing, waiting and waiting. I mean, I know there's other you can do, but Barb, we feel your pain. We thank you for being on this call with us, and I guess we're just going to have to hope things get better sooner.
Steve, I would say the one immediate recourse would be to take a look, and I'll follow up with you to get you some more information on that. The program that I mentioned earlier about the certification program, which helps the public have, increased confidence in a business that has gone through a certification process. And so that's at least something that we can do and help Barb at least take some preemptive steps to getting back to where you need to be. Sadly, these are uncharted waters, and folks really don't know what they're going into. What I can tell you right now is I don't work in a gym. I work in an office, and even we are trying to figure out what that new normal is going to look like. Do we wear masks? How many employees do we bring back on any given day? How are we going to address all this? And so, Barb, to one of the things I'd like to offer, it's just a bit more information about what you can do to prepare for the day that it reopens. Is to take a look on our website. We have a list of resources for businesses who are preparing to reopen. There are things that you're going to see on there, from links to a number of different federal partners that we work with, the likes of the CDC and OSHA, and including the EPA. The EPA has provided us with a list of disinfectants that work on viral organisms like COVID. And these are the types of things we're trying to share with businesses to let them see these are the types of steps you're going to need to take. So while I can't exactly help you with this one particular issue and how to get you open sooner, what I can tell you is that when you do get open, there's a number of things to show everyone that you understand the situation that we're in and you're taking the steps to make sure that your business is as safe as any other.
Okay. Barb Blair, thank you so much. We're gonna work with you to get you that information. I just got a question from a constituent, said, what is the name of their gym? Correct me if I'm wrong, it's the Exercise Coach. Okay, I got it right. I was at the ribbon cutting. Okay, thank you. And they're in Cary and Morrisville. And we've got a few more minutes. This has been a very great hour. I think lots of great questions, lots of people attending. This is one of our better attended virtual town halls, but we have very good guests with a lot of information. So we want to thank you for providing that information. Do we have any other questions, folks, before we wrap up? For a reminder, you can go to Matt, before we leave and I give out some closing remarks, the website for the Wake Forward program again, please.
Yeah, it's just www.wakegov.com, which is the county homepage. And so it's wakegov.com/wakeforward. And our applications for the Wake Forward program just went live at noon today. So
okay,
folks looking at it now are right at the front of the line.
Okay, great. And I just had one final question came in. It said they wanted to know the municipal partnership. So we want to thank Chairman Ford and the Commission for involving municipalities as you declared a state of emergency. It was very important for other towns to be involved in that. What do we mean now about the COVID-19, this CARES funding? How can that funding go towards towns and cities in Wake County?
Yeah, so I can tell you that we have already earmarked a fair amount of money to reimbursing municipalities for their COVID-19 related expenses. So whether that be purchasing PPE or other expenses, that's what we have done so far. Again, we are constrained by the restrictions placed on us by the federal government, so can't make up for lost revenues. That includes, obviously we're all trying to, Counselor, we're trying to figure out our budget situations right now because we're all hurting due to the lack of sales tax revenue in particular. So we can't make up for lost revenue, but we can reimburse government or COVID-19 related expenses. And that's the main way that we're going to be able to help spread some of that money to help close some gaps at the municipal level.
Okay, that's very helpful to know. Global Business Services, okay. It's a global, John has just sent something to about EDPNC, correct?
That's that link to that Count on Me NC, just so that folks have that information as well.
Okay,
That's
fantastic, fantastic. And then I think that there's also places you can go to read about jobs, job openings. If you're unemployed, you can go to EDPN's website. They have a list there. Well, we want to thank both of you for being with us and everyone who attended. Today, on Monday, we're celebrating Memorial Day. And we want to just take this opportunity to thank all of the soldiers who gave their lives from the founding of this nation so America could live on. And we also want to thank the veterans who dedicated their service to our nation. And as I close out and we begin to celebrate the Memorial Day facilities, I was speaking to a group of high school students recently, virtually, some of the seniors, and it dawned upon me that in my lifetime, I never lived through a world war, but we're living through a world war right now. It's a war in our healthcare system. It's an economic war. And, I just think we ought to thank the soldiers, but also the healthcare workers, the volunteers, the people delivering PPE, the restaurants that are delivering food to Morrisville first responders all across the county, the Wake Human Services, food banks, distributing food. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, even, there's been so many organizations doing so many great things. And, I guess that's just my closing message. I just want to thank you, Matt Calabria, the commissioners, John Loyack, all the way from the top to the governor, to all the elected officials, the mayors, the council members, but the volunteers and the businesses, because wars are won by heroes. And I think that we're all heroes right now. We're working hard to get through this. It's scary because it's uncertain, but that's what I told the kids in my message is that I've been running a lot, 200 miles last month because no gyms are open. So I'm going to turn 50 this July, so I hope I have knees. But what I told him, I reminded him of the Mariah Carey song, "There's a Hero That Lies Inside of Us." And I mean, I think that, we just got to find it and bring it, And so that's my closing message to each of you is thank you for bringing your best to make North Carolina strong. And I want to wish you and your family safety and everyone listening to the show, and enjoy the Memorial Day weekend in phase 2, which will be
Thank you
different.
for having us and for everything I know you're doing for Morrisville.
Thank you so much. Well, we really appreciate everyone being here today. I want to thank Radio Murchie. This has been broadcast on the radio live. We'll probably be broadcasting it on Sunday. So we want to thank Ravi Chakuri and the team at Radio Murchie, and I'll be sending everyone the links when you go to send this. So have a great Wednesday evening, and everybody, thank you for joining this town hall event, and we look forward to doing another one. We're going to be doing a Memorial Day special on Monday, and then we've got one coming on May 30th with the Secretary of State and a few other special guests. But thank you so much, and have a great evening. A lot of great information.
Thank you.
Thank you.